conversation, cool conversation, cool conversation.
If you read a poem or you listen to a song and then like you catch a pattern, it felt like you were solving a puzzle. It feels like magic. That was the thing that drew me to making music. My name is A D Carson. I'm assistant professor of hip hop in the Global South. I am a rapper, try to make art that hopefully people listen to. As a young student, of course the creative stuff was encouraged, but it was always extra. It felt to me like it shouldn't be extra. It felt like it was the thing. I believe that art is necessary for us to be able to interpret the world in ways that will connect us to other people. The students come from all across the university, varying levels of experience and expertise, and I find them to be really curious. And I think that curiosity is probably the best thing that you could have as a hip hop artist or as a person who's looking to study anything. Where we really get down to business is like when we have our open hours, when everybody is there and they're just bringing their questions, they're bringing their music, they're bringing their ideas. It's really, really helpful time, the unstructured time to just be in a room with creative people making stuff. They have so much to bring to our conversations about knowledge production, about argumentation, about what's happening in the world right now. How do you make an expert in something that has been historically excluded from the space? It's a question that I hold about myself, and it's a question that I continue to hold about hip hop and academia. How did we get here? And what makes the work good? What makes the work valuable? What makes the work rigorous? There are lots of classes that I've been in and that I've taught where I just went to do my work and then I left and I didn't know anybody, didn't know anybody's name. I hope that it's impossible for students to come into my class and not learn each other's names and learn about one another. And so it's not just a matter of creating a connection between me as an instructor and them as students, but it's a connection between them as people who share a community, not just in the classroom, but at the university and eventually, the world.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a very, very exciting and super exclusive interview right here on Miss Hennessy TV, the new show, the new series, Cool Conversations. I am so very excited to finally be able to speak to this incredible human. It's taken us a while to get here, but we're both busy trying to change the world in our own ways. Of course, he's doing yards more, let's be honest, but it's just a real pleasure to have A D Carson join the show, the incredible associate professor of hip hop and a Shannon Center fellow for advanced studies at the University of Virginia. Welcome to the show, brother. How are you?
Peace, peace. Thank you so much for having me. I feel all right. How about you?
We're doing okay. As you and I spoke a little bit in the beginning, obviously it is around 9 a.m. Is it New York time for you at the moment? Um,
hmm
and 11 p.m. in Sydney here on a Friday. So we're at the tail end of sort of opposite ends of our day, but we're doing all right. Winter over here for us and summer for you. So how's your summer going? I'm seeing pictures, people getting hot, and what's the weather like over there?
So it's incredibly warm here. I took the opportunity to take a research trip to Ireland for I think it was about a week.
Wow.
So, like I got my travel out of the way. I'm, trying to make sure that folks know about my current album before I drop a new album
Wow.
and a book and all of that. And I mean, I think that that's also just partially because like I'm not, I don't think that I'm making music as like content just to have something in front of people.
Mm,
I really want people to contend with what's there, and I don't think the most effective way to do that is to just give more stuff, put
yeah,
more stuff in front of folks.
right.
So I want to be really deliberate about having folks listen to what I'm saying currently,
Mm,
so that when they listen to whatever comes after, they can see how these things relate to the stuff that's been,
yeah,
that I've been dealing with. So that's me. I'm over here, planning, plotting, and strategizing.
I love it. And not in that order, or is that how we organize ourselves within that order? Platin, was
Uh,
it plotting?
Planning, plotting, and strategizing. Yeah, I mean that's the way that Tupac said it on Bomb First back in the late 1900s, as they say.
1900s. I know we are that old, and we don't care that we say it like that. Now,
Yeah.
Adi, you have I mean, just reading your bio, it was it kind of I took a gasp of air just reading all the incredible accomplishments that you have amassed over the years. Um, you obviously from Decatur, Illinois. And you're known as a performance artist, an educator, a writer, and a commentator who deals with the issues of race, place, history, literature, hip hop, rhetorics, and performance. People can find your written essays and music, obviously, within Rolling Stone magazine, Washington Post, Spin, Los Angeles Times. The, the list goes on. You've been doing this for a minute,
Yeah.
but your major passion, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, would walk the thin line of being a performance artist and an educator?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think that the so for me, like living it, it's almost like they're not separate. Like if when I go on stage, I think that one of my major intentions is to educate.
Yeah,
And when you're standing in front of a class, I think that one of the things that you have to understand is that you're performing. And
um,
so I don't like sort of as I embody it, it doesn't feel like there are two separate things that are going on.
yeah,
It's just that the context changes wherever you are. So it's the same with making rap music as like a so-called academic product. The like the rap writing is not research,
mm,
and all of the scholarship isn't the way that the scholarship gets produced.
right,
I'm researching and I'm writing, and a lot of the stuff that I write ends up being rap music.
yeah,
Some of it some of it ends up being essays in places like Rolling Stone or LA Times or wherever else. And then some of it comes out in conversations that I'm having face to face with folks. And
mm,
so it doesn't seem that complicated as I'm navigating it myself. But I think that the ways that culturally we understand artists to, like the space that we believe artists hold,
yeah,
um, means that like most folks who are like standing in front of a crowd with the mic in their hand
mm,
is like an object that people are consuming rather than an interlocutor or someone who's trying to challenge them in ways that make them think differently about whatever it is that like whatever shared experiences we're about to go through. And I think that that does us a disservice as audience
mm,
audiences to art, and it does a disservice to the artist because I don't think that it gives us the full range of our humanity to be like to be anything other than entertaining.
right,
And I don't want folks to engage with what I do as like mere entertainment or pure entertainment. There's that aspect, but like I'm trying to teach, I'm trying to do all of those things that I came up understanding
yeah,
were the ways that made the world accessible to me in and I think ways that like sharpened my mind and made me, like really made me love hip hop, made me understand myself a lot better. So I think that we collectively can be better critical and analytical thinkers by engaging with uh, again, like hip hop, not as a particular product, but as a set of practices,
Right.
uh,
Absolutely.
ways that we come together, ways that we listen, ways that we, like sort of listen and then respond, like those kinds of things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I know you and I first um, got introduced when we sat on a panel. I think I was facilitating a panel way back in COVID days for the for 4E. Shout out to Viv, and it was obviously a panel about hip hop in education, and it was the first time
Mhm.
I ever heard about A D Carson, and we were doing it. Obviously, it was zoomed, and we were all obviously, there was a couple. The ones here in Australia were in this room, and but having to facilitate that panel, I was struck with, and I've done that for many years. I've held space in this particular community for over 25 years. So nothing really kind of phased me until I heard what you did, and when I heard you speak on the work that you've done, and again hearing you speak now on, it's not just for entertainment's sake. There's an educational purpose behind everything that you do. And I got that day, and it has stayed with me ever since. And I did obviously a bit more research on you, and read that you earned a PhD in rhetorics, communication, and information design at Clemson University into
Mhm.
2017. It's a very small thing that wouldn't have been hard at all, right? And obviously doing that by submitting a rap album um, called Owning My Masters, The Rhetorics of Rhymes and Revolutions, as your doctoral dissertation. Can we chat about that? Because obviously, the whole world of, um, dissertations and PhDs is incredibly foreign to me. But I know so many people that are in that space, and I'm always in awe of people who have those titles behind them, because it's no easy feat. So how did we arrive at that space for you? Can we explore that?
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate the question. And, I, I think that part of now that I think about it, like how I've tried to conceptualize hip hop in academia as being analogous to drugs. And in the ways that we might, talk about sort of like the goodness of something as like sort of its dopeness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the PhD process really was highly connected to the idea of sanctioning, like who gets to say what is a thing or isn't a thing, who gets to say that this kind of hip hop pedagogy or this kind of rap song or this kind of performance or this kind of writing is quote unquote academic or not.
Right.
And and now I don't think that I had that language then. I was working in Illinois and making music and teaching. I was teaching this weekend academy for the school district, and I had also like traveled to represent the school district, talking about how to raise student achievement, particularly thinking about how hip hop might intervene in raising student achievement. And then um, a radio commentator interviewed me about the weekend academy, and everything was all good. But then maybe 3 days later, I think the guy went online and maybe saw some music that I made on YouTube. And then he was pissed. He's like, now he's upset, and he's like, we shouldn't have people like this teaching our children if this is the kind of thing that he says, if this is what he does. And my response to that is like, well, what is this dude listening to? Because like just the other day he told me how brilliant he thought it was and how
Right.
he believed that we were doing necessary work for young people.
Wow.
And I mean, I understood that to be like sort of fear mongering and just like the scare
Mhm.
tactic, like people use um, weapons for cultural war and try to, like create a wedge. Um, but then the school district, they started investigating. And my thought was, well, what are you investigating? You sent me to the state, to that state conference to talk about what I do.
Wow.
You're hosting this academy that I'm teaching on the weekends. It would seem to me that if you said yes to those things, then the investigation you're talking about wouldn't be necessary because you'd already vetted whatever it is you thought I do. But I think that they were also trying to appease that audience that listened to that guy and then were upset. And I'm not mad that parents want to know what goes on in classrooms. I'm just saying, who are you going to get to investigate what I'm doing to tell those people that it's okay or it's not okay? If there's a such thing as an expert in this district, I'm not saying it's got to be me,
Right.
but I want to know whoever it is because I could talk to those parents about what I do. And if you listen, maybe you learn something as well.
Right.
No, they say they're going to investigate, and I'm like, all right. It goes on for I think too long because now I'm sitting here worried about my job. I'm worried about my livelihood. I'm worried about whether they're going to take stuff that I said out of context. And then the HR director comes back and he, like they changed the scopes of it. Then they started saying, well, is he using district property to enrich himself, like to make money and like to record, like am I recording on district property? And all of it was bullshit. So I meet with the HR director. HR guy says, we've come to the conclusion that you can keep making music, but use appropriate discretion. And I'm like, well, that's silly because who doesn't use appropriate discretion as an artist?
Right.
That just doesn't make sense. I went through multiple steps to upload whatever it was that I uploaded there that you saw. But now I feel insulted. And so I start looking at like, well, what would it mean to become an expert in whatever it is that I'm doing? Because as I'm thinking about what's going on there, I'm like, well, who would the expert be? If it's not me, then who would be the person that could appropriately assuage whatever their doubts or whatever their fears were about whatever it is that I was doing? And at that point, I'm like, well, maybe like if I'm not that person by virtue of the time that I've put in and the work that I've done, maybe I can become that person by virtue of going to get one of these degrees that they respect. And so that was the way that happened. Now, I don't think that I gained any more respect for the degree or for the system that makes someone have to go and get that in order to be considered an expert. I think that expertise, very often when it is connected to one of those kinds of degrees or these institutions, is very often just a way for white supremacy to, rear its ugly face in a way of saying that if you don't have this particular credential, then we're not going to take you seriously.
Right.
I don't think that I learned as much about hip hop um, when I was in that program as I did anytime that I wasn't in the program. I
Right.
did learn a lot about academia. I did learn a lot about American educational institutions. I did learn a lot about what it means to study in hostile geographic and academic terrain. I did learn about what this kind of sanctioning thing looks like and um, how it might affect people like me, or how it might use me in order to unduly burden people who look like me or come from wherever, like the places that I come from. So it was a worthwhile pursuit to get the degree so that I could say the same shit or the same kinds of shit that I was saying before and do the same kind of work that I was doing before.
Right.
And then when somebody because the scrutiny doesn't go away. So then when somebody says we shouldn't have this or this shouldn't be going on, when they Google to find whoever it is that they're going to ask to interpret this, the name that comes up is me. And now they've got to contend with me as a person who is credentialed as the kind of expert that they ask about this, rather than me sitting at home having to wait for them to decide whether it's good or not, or whether it's real or not. And so I think that was what that process was for me. It was really frustrating.
Wow.
And I mean, it would be probably like too flip to say that, like I got a PhD out of spite. But I mean, I did get it in response to some pretty shitty circumstances
Yeah.
that probably shouldn't have happened in the first place. But I'm also really glad because there, like, at the same time was all this other stuff going on in academia, where by the time I um, was on the job market and started thinking about what my next step might be, I saw the announcement for the job that I'm in currently as a professor of hip hop at the University of Virginia. And initially I thought, this is what I'm talking about. Like, they keep trying to do things that they're not qualified to do.
Yeah.
Who's hiring a professor of hip hop, and how are they going to determine whatever that is? And it took a little, like, sort of push from some of my mentors in Clemson to say, or to help me realize, the thing that I said I was going to get the degree for is, like, this is a kind of opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
That like you can get, like, if you're in that position, then you can say those things, but you can also embody what it means to navigate a position like that
Mhm.
from an institution of the kind that you're saying is doing this kind of, like, this kind of um weird thing with regard to credentialing or providing, like, the veneer of expertise. And so that, to me, has been challenging and rewarding, but it is also, I mean, it's so strange because, like, everything feels new.
Yeah.
You're going through things, you're getting advice from people about stuff that they haven't gone through, because not many people have, treaded not many people have tread this path.
That's right.
So
That's
so
right.
that's like, probably, I mean, that provides a whole lot of the challenge, but it also provides, like, many opportunities for the things that feel rewarding.
Of course, of course. I had no idea that would have been the actual driver, but now that you break it down, it makes sense as to why there's a line here in your bio where you've gone, Dr. Carson is suspicious of academia and academics. And I thought, I'm suspicious about it too. Look, I'm currently studying at the moment too, an associate degree in education support. And
Mhm.
look, I'm more suspicious of the grammatical side of academia. I am not a
Mhm.
fan of the essay writing. I'm not a fan of being marked down as to my comma is in the wrong place, because I'm, at the end of the day, I'm dealing with kids with behavioral issues who hip
Yeah.
hop is therapy for them. They don't care where my comma goes. But my husband keeps reminding me it's just academia and you just have to follow suit. And as a writer myself, that stuff frustrates me, because people get so caught up in the way things should look and sound, as opposed to I'm actually living, walking, breathing the job every day. And
Yeah.
like yourself, having to get a degree or get academics behind me so that I can say I'm the right person for the job. So I totally get what you're saying. It's not PhD related, but I get it. And
Mhm.
it doesn't change the job. It doesn't change who you are as a person with or without that. But it's one of those necessary requirements to be able to then be accepted to be able to do the job you're doing anyway. So when I
Yeah.
read that, I went, oh my God, he's speaking to my spirit human right now, because it's the one thing that I sometimes really regret about studying, and I think the older you go back into college study, the less time you have for that stuff. Life is really happening every single day, and you're sat there just trying to perfect essays, but worrying about where how certain things will be read. And I find that takes away the actual pleasure of learning for me. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that up on my study wall and just have it there as a reminder. If
Word,
AD did
word.
it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, yeah, and it's I mean, I think that that's yeah, it really is. I mean, when folks, especially artists, talk about going back to school or whatever it might be, I'm usually really straightforward about saying, use the opportunity to learn what you can, but also know that you're in a position to teach, and and you might not be learning about the thing that you're an expert on, but please be mindful that like some of these people are experts on things that might be helpful to you along the way. And
Absolutely.
so in that way, I think that it is, I mean, I don't know that it's important to like know the rules before you break them, because sometimes, like the ignorance of the rule, um makes it uncontroversial. I know, like my first time negotiating for a job, I didn't know anything, and I think that that probably benefited me
Yeah,
to not know anything, because then I could just ask for the things that I felt I needed. And then when someone says no one's ever asked for that before, then I'm like, well, like,
yeah,
this is also our first time talking. So I would be asking regardless. But like the very idea that like because nobody has asked, nobody should ever ask, or because it's not been done, nobody should ever do it. I think that yeah, like it's just it like yeah, I really do. I appreciate the time that I spent there. It was awful. It was an atrocious time being there, studying, being in those rooms, and like the sheer violence of some of it was terrifying. But I feel like I learned what I needed to learn there, even if what I learned wasn't as much about how
mm,
to write rhymes or how to put together like a project. And still my art was affected by being there because I was there and not, at home. I was 10 hours away from any of my family. Like that, all of those things are going to affect how you produce whatever it is that you produce.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Can we talk a little bit about? I know hip hop education is and has always been, very, very uh, can we say recognized and utilized within the school systems in America. So even with I know for us, primary here is kindergarten to year 6, and then high school is year 7 to year 12. Um, there's a few hip hop educators Instagram pages, social media that I follow, just obviously for my own sort of inspiration and ideas when it comes to me sort of teaching the kids that I come in contact with at my school. Um, does every school in the US sort of lean on hip hop education, hip hop music therapy in classes, or is it something that is purely state based? Because I know the education um, landscape in the US is incredibly what's the word? Uh, jagged at the moment. There's a lot of a lot of conversation, a lot of controversy around
Oh,
certain things, books that can't can be read, this, that, and the third. But I've always thought that hip hop seemed to have quite a place when it comes to education in the US. Is that a right or wrong way to look at it from an educator's point on this in this side of the world?
yeah, I wish that was true. I don't think that it is. I think that music education, like more generally, is something that is being cut from schools here. Um, and there is a big push by educators, particularly music educators, to make that a more fundamental part of what we do. Like to try to hold on to what we have and to sort of to bring more of it into school.
Mm-hmm.
And so then hip hop, like some of those people who love or who advocate for music might not even really respect or appreciate hip hop. So that's even more niche. But I think that the reason that it may seem like that is because of the, like just like sort of the sheer global prominence of hip hop culture, hip hop music. across the world.
Mm.
And so it's being exported from these places to people, in other parts of the United States, but also across the world.
Yeah.
And so I think that makes it an incredibly accessible common text that everybody can have, which means that it doesn't matter whether there is any kind of official program at any school. If somebody goes to a school and asks people about their listening practices or about their making practices or about the way that they come together around music, that conversation is very likely to intersect with hip hop in some way.
Yes.
And so I think that because of that, it's a missed opportunity that many schools or the majority of schools are missing out on ways that they might be able to reach their primary constituents
Mm.
by not having a by not having a hip hop educator or by not
Yeah.
having someone who's proficiently um, engaged with and about uh, pop culture, you know,
Yeah.
from the present, back, maybe 25 or 50 years.
Mhm.
Because if you have that, I think that um, it leads to opportunities to converse and to learn and to teach
Yeah.
about any of the things that are going on right now. And so I imagine that, like with like the current presidential um campaign that's going on here, the like one of the campaigns used the Kendrick Lamar song on social media to speak about their opponent. And so like you see like sort of the ethos and the logic
Yeah.
and really like the popularity of a rap battle
Yeah.
enter into the sphere of presidential debate.
Yeah.
And I mean, I totally understand why a person might not care or might not be that invested in presidential politics.
Right.
But if they know anything about those rap battles, you might be able to
Yeah.
ask them, what is the effectiveness of doing this on social media as,
Yeah.
I don't know, an 80-something-year-old um, presidential candidate?
Yeah.
So, like I said, I think it's a missed opportunity where it's not happening. And yeah, I truly do wish that there were more, and especially even at the college level, because I think even more folks at that level are branching out and finding what their aesthetic tastes are.
Mhm.
And so someone might show up to a class, up to a hip hop class, and say, I don't know anything about anything. I've heard what I've heard,
Mm.
but I'm really here to learn what there is to be learned
Right.
about this incredibly popular culture.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it could be a whole lot better. It could be much bigger
Well, you
if folks.
yeah, you've just answered that in a nutshell for me, because like I said, obviously being on this side of the world where you don't have anything hip hop in school at all. I mean, Australia is still grappling with the idea that hip hop is one of the most one of the largest music genres, and it's a movement, it's a lifestyle, it's a culture. They still can't get their heads around that completely. So having that in a school environment, I'm very blessed to work at the school that I work at, because I think you need to have innovative leadership as well, and people who are risk takers when it comes to not sort of pushing the envelope, but exploring different ways of, reaching their students, especially the disengaged students, the kids who seem to be, getting into trouble a lot. I find that with a lot of the programs that I tend to write or also work on, it's rap writing, rap for literacy, beat making, podcasting, radio skills, and these kids get out of their brains with the, oh, I'm going to mess up again, to, oh, I can go into the studio with Miss Maxine and I can I can write a rap. I can learn how to rap my feelings out. And I think there's nothing more cathartic and organic than that. But you've got to have that um, respect from the top, from, principals and things like that who trust your vision. So I am very, very blessed to
Yeah.
work at work. But I am quite surprised to hear you say that there aren't many, there aren't enough schools or, even on the college level. I always seem to think the colleges have, all of these incredible hip hop classes, and Nas
Yeah.
has got a school named after him, and
Mhm.
Lupe Fiasco's doing.
Yeah.
So I think it's just the way it's packaged. But yeah, you're so right. That is a missed opportunity indeed.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that and even in the way that I know that we talked just a little bit about grammars and conventions in the ways that folks are so set on like where a comma goes in a sentence. So even if folks were interested in that, like when I'm teaching rap writing, and I'm thinking about this as a rhetorical practice as well, then I'm teaching the conventions and the expectations and the grammars of that particular form, because all of the forms that we produce in, even if we're making a YouTube show or
Yeah,
we're making an Instagram reel or we're making like a post on whatever social media, there are conventions
yeah.
that make those things work effectively.
Mhm.
And so you get the opportunity. I mean, I just imagine that people are going to, young people particularly are going to are more likely to compose for social media than they are going to compose a 5 paragraph essay for anyone in any, I don't know, capacity outside of school.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then um hip hop or pop culture provides the opportunity to teach grammars and conventions in ways that folks are going to carry forward in their actual lives.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I think that's another part of it that's a missed opportunity, is that even the kinds of things that we claim we want to do with the traditional ways that we are engaging in education
Mhm.
would be better, more efficiently rendered if we were to engage with some of the forms that we're talking about.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more there. Absolutely. Um, which is a perfect segue into the next thing that you are titled with, which is an author, and you've authored several books, including a novel which is called Cold. And it says here it hybridizes poetry, rap lyrics, and prose. Um, and that was it. Is it right to say that that particular novel has been featured um, by Complex, the Chronicle of Higher Education, Forbes, The Guardian, the Journal for Cultural and Religious Theory? Is that the novel that is kind of featured in all of those publications?
Well, the novel was what preceded the album that was featured in those publications. The album, that was the dissertation, owning my master. So Cold, I wrote Cold before I went into the doctoral program, because I had these ideas, these feelings about genre and about how the conventions of particular genres might look if you put them side by side. So, how does poetry work? How does prose work? How do rap lyrics work? And if you put them all like and really, like, how does a novel work? And I mean, like, I am glad that I wrote the book, but I feel like the book um, failed in my primary mission, which was to disrupt our ideas about, or to disrupt ideas of audiences about, say, like the difference between text on
Mm,
the page and audio.
okay.
And I think the reason that it feels like a failure is because, like, I wrote Cold as an album. I wrote an album called Cold, and I was going through a whole lot. And when it came time to release the album, I thought, well, I feel really close to it, and I don't want it to be like, just another album.
Right.
And like, again, now currently I don't feel like any album is just another album. I feel like that has a whole lot to do with the ways that audiences like fetishize particular um kinds of media.
Mm-hmm.
And so people respond differently to a book than they do to an album.
Yeah.
People respond to words on the page differently than they do to a sound file. So, um, in my desire to trouble that that difference, writing a book that has lyrics, poetry, and prose, I think that it does like raise some of those questions, but like it also kind of flattens the conversation because they're all contained within a book. And so folks will take the book and prioritize the book and say that the book like proves that, you know, like, I mean, in this instance, you're quote unquote more than a rapper.
Mm.
And in my mind, I'm like, well, every rapper is more than a rapper. Like every person who makes art is more than the art they make. But how is it that like the kind of art you make flattens your humanity into like this really, really small package? And if you write a book, then you know, like you're sort of capable of more in people's minds.
Yeah.
I mean, so like
True.
nobody, I mean, nobody says like, you know, when you're an author, nobody says, well, you know, he's more than an author. And I think the reason that that happens has to do with, like I said, these things that are projected onto hip hop, like these cultural assumptions. And so I'm glad I wrote it because then I realized that when I would tell people this book is kind of like extensive liner notes for this album that I wrote, then folks still would kind of ignore the album because when you're talking about your music, people are like, oh, this dude is trying to sell us a mixtape. And when you write a book, then people are like, oh, you're literary.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's weird to me that they would make that move because I've written all of them, you know, these different forms. And I think that they all are incredibly challenging in many different kinds of ways and in some of the same ways. But I don't say that rap is poetry. I don't say that poetry is rap. I don't say that a novel and an album are analogous. I don't think that they're all the same thing. Because I write all of them, I write them all with intention. And I wouldn't be able to, for instance, like turn a poem into a rap song just by putting the poem over a beat. Or I wouldn't be able to turn a rap song into a poem simply by removing the beat. And I couldn't do that with either of those and then make them into prose and then be like, well, this is a, you know, this is a paragraph because it is not written in poetry, in poetic form or written onto a beat. That's silly.
Yeah.
But the reasons I think that people try to make rap into poetry or try to make rap into like literary prose has to do with these notions, these colonial notions that all of us are aspiring to exist in a particular form.
Yeah.
All of us are aspiring to you know, like be these black letters on white cloth pages rather than being who, how, and what we are in the ways that we might show up. And so like, I think that that move toward trying to like move to put everything on the page, even thinking about a dissertation, when folks think of a dissertation as being a particular form of writing, a particular kind of document, my thought about that is like, yeah, but why does it have to be? It doesn't really have to be that. Who said it's got to be that? And so in writing the album to disrupt that notion, then folks are like, well, what's the printed document look like? And if you don't have a printed document, then you didn't really do the thing. And I'm like, if the thing has to be a printed document, then I don't think that it proves what you're saying it proves. And so that was and I think that's maybe the reason that all of those venues have been interested in covering the dissertation, is because it was really to like say that like I don't think that like the ideal genre for me or my work is bound in a book. Now I've written books, and so I can say that from experience that I don't think that a book would communicate the thing that I want to communicate with that album. And so the book version of the album is always going to be a substandard or it's going to be an inferior product. It's not going to be the thing that I'm trying to present. And if you tell me to present it in that way, and then you say, well, it's not very good or I don't like it. And it's like, yeah, well, like it's weird for you to say that I don't like that as a book when the thing itself doesn't even want to be a book. It's not even meant to be a book. And so, yeah.
I think as like just hearing you break that down, and I'm sitting in the thing that comes to my mind is society, and especially in like today's cultural climate, are obsessed with labels and titles.
Yep.
And I do a lot of reading, right? And especially a lot of like the audio books and walking. Now I'm obsessed with books. I'm a writer. I'm an author of two myself, and so whenever I speak to another author, I love to really kind of know what gets your mind juices going. Like some people can write a book in a year. Other people can write a book, and it might take them. For me, a couple of books, it takes a while because there's other things going on and writer's block and all that sort of stuff. But there's been a couple of books that I've been listening to because right now I'm finding listening to audiobooks has been a lot easier than the actual physical reading. I can't stop to read long enough. And I was reading this book, and the guy said, as human beings, we're so obsessed with immortality projects, right? We feel we have to leave a legacy behind of the things that are in our minds, the things that we've done for future generations to go, well, they did that, so I can now copy that with my own immortality project. And that struck me, an immortality project. And I went, do I think like that? You know, I'm working on 2 books at the moment. Why am I pressuring myself to get them done in a certain format? And oh God, what if I, let this out? It's not going to land where I want it to land because my first book was an absolute nightmare for me. And I'm looking at re-releasing it, right? But even that in itself, AD, is such a major task to take on. But then hearing you say that now as well, sometimes things don't want to be the things that we put them out as. And especially when, hip hop is its own organism. And depending on the carrier of that or the creator of it, to be able to be bound by what, well, no, that should be a book. And I'll appreciate it more as a book than if it was the album. But you need to listen to it, not really read it. I don't think people get that because they're obsessed with titles. They're obsessed with labels of you're an author, you're a professor, you're a this, you're a that, and that shines more than the work, the content. So I totally get it, and you've spoken to me majorly with that. I totally get that.
Word. Yeah, no, and I think that there's like part of what you're saying about this obsession with forms, with titles, and I think that the titles correspond to like what we would probably understand as like sort of a legibility. Like, like someone will say, like, once I know how to address you, then I know how to respect you. I know how to engage you. I know how to treat you and all that thing, rather than just like, being respectful to people because they're people. But I think that it's not an obsession that comes out of nowhere. I think that obsession is actually taught to us at a very early age and reinforced over and over. And because of that, then when I talk about being a rapper, or I talk about like the other forms that I might show up in, it is confounding for folks because someone might say, why would you want to be any of those other things, especially if they think any of those other things are like lesser things, when you can be this thing that I actually respect. And so like, and they're maybe not even thinking about their respect or like their affordance of respect as the problem. And so like, but this has, and I think that this has to do with prioritizing literacy in this very singularly focused way. Like if you can inhabit language in the colonizer's tongue on paper, then you are participating at the highest level of humanity. And that's something that is absolutely taught and reinforced, like sometimes really passively, other times really actively, sometimes incredibly violently. And this, again, like this notion that if you don't like speak the Queen's English and write it in the way that it has been taught to you, then you're not a person worthy of respecting.
Right.
That's the issue. I think that that's the issue, and it's related to the titles, it's related to the forms, it's related to the genres, it's related to all of these ways that we make like hierarchies of humanity.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
do you think our generation fell prey to that more than this new generation now?
Well, I think that we have more technology, and the thing that I mean, and because I think that ultimately this is technological, like the thing that is going on when someone says you must write in this way in order to present yourself or a like an avatar for yourself, like your writing corresponds to your body.
Right.
That's technological. Like I mean, like writing is a technology, like paper or pencil or pen. And we have advanced technology now, which means that when you're teaching someone how to write in cursive with a graphite pencil on paper, that is largely outmoded technology.
Yeah.
When you're telling someone that they have to do that and they have to learn that, they might say, when am I ever going to
Oh,
use this in my real life? And they will be absolutely correct.
yeah.
And that's because we have other technology that does that, like not just more efficiently and more effectively. The older technology that we're using is obsolete, except that we're teaching people that they have to use it.
Mm.
So I think that younger folks can kind of see that that's that they're being asked to learn antiquated technology or learn with antiquated technology. And so I think that like falling prey to it as a previous generation really has to do with the fact that there might have been some relevance to it before everyone had a word processor in their pocket
Yeah.
or everyone had, had a Wi-Fi connection.
Mm.
And now that those are technologies that we have, I think that we probably be better served by learning how to work with the technologies that are relevant and will be relevant. Now, I'm not saying don't teach people cursive. I'm not saying don't don't use paper and pen. What I'm saying is the requirements for those probably should be different because we're living in different times.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, so that I think that's the issue. I like the feel of like pen on paper. I have favorite ink pens, that's my thing. But if a person doesn't have to use an ink pen and never uses an ink pen and never uses paper, that's fine.
Yeah. I'm always
That's
amazed
fine.
that there are still stores, and I'm sure there are in the US where people go and they have these pen shops and they sell paper. And we've got a couple here in Sydney, and I look at my kids and I go, who's buying a $200 pen when all people are doing on smartphones? And it's just, but the fact that that's still there is exactly
Yeah.
what you said. I'm a pen person. I love stationery. Give me a good paper and a good pen. But that there are still dedicated pen shops is it blows my mind given the technology that we're living amongst.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, you and I have both, uh, recent times we've been featured on sort of news programs here in Australia, and obviously for yourself in the US, talking about what is happening in our beloved hip hop community
Mhm.
at the moment, especially with you know the uh, the vanguards of this incredible sort of golden age of hip hop that we've come through or that we've grown up in and that has influenced us. The people who have spearheaded some incredible moments in music history sort of crumbling before our eyes with rap beefs, Kendrick Lamar and Drake not so long ago. We've had R. Kelly, just years of constant conspiracy and courts, and he's serving time, and of course recently Diddy. So there was an incredible special that you were showcased on in 60 Minutes here in Australia as the hip hop authoritarian, speaking on,
Hmm.
P. Diddy and unfortunately what seems to be the downfall of the bad boy empire. So there's so much weight, AD, and there's so many conversations that can be had, and there are so many conversations being had, right or wrong,
Mm-hmm.
about the state of hip hop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, as a professor of hip hop, as a person who is engaged in hip hop every day, you're obviously asked a lot of questions about it. You have to speak on TV and the whole deal. What are your thoughts? Like removing all of the titles, removing all of that, as a pure lover of and a student of hip hop yourself, what are your thoughts about what's going on at the moment, especially with Diddy?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that question. Um, I wish that um yeah, it would be I mean, it's an honor to be asked, honestly. And to have folks consider whatever it is that I'm thinking about anything.
Mm,
And in this case, like about hip hop, I mean, I think that we can it should be obvious that we can learn a whole lot about ourselves um by tuning into the kinds of things that we make ourselves audience to.
yeah.
And I think that if we were to go back and say, like, look at Diddy 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the kinds of things that he did publicly that audiences loved, I don't think that they're much different from the things that he's being accused of right now and are causing this, like what folks are calling a downfall.
Mm,
And so that speaks to changing times. Um, and that, like, maybe also speaks to our changing temperaments for like what we accept from people who are put in a position like he was in. And so I don't think that this is a conversation only about hip hop, but because hip hop is so globally popular,
mm,
then we can find versions of all of the things in society that we find distasteful or that we don't like showing themselves through the particular lens of hip hop.
yes.
And so as you look at the court cases for whatever it might be, as you look at the like sort of rap beef and sort of cultural tourism as a component of that, but also like blatant misogyny and homophobia that exists there, um, or looking at say like here in the States, gun violence. Um, if you look at the way that like certain people are written out of histories and then narratives imposed over them, all of these things have versions, have variations that are colored prominently by hip hop, but these are larger conversations culturally that are happening across the board. And so I think that it's still like while hip hop is influential across cultures, we also need to understand that a lot of what is reflected in hip hop is taken from the culture that brought hip hop into being. It's not hip hop bringing those things into being, it's the other way around. And so it's going to be like these things are reflective of larger cultural forces. And so in the case of Diddy, yes, it's awful, and it's unfortunately unsurprising,
Mm,
but we can't allow ourselves to be fooled into believing that what is going on with Diddy and the abuse that he committed against the people that he committed it against is unique to hip hop. And so we know from like the Epsteins and the Weinsteins of the world,
Yeah,
and like Kevin Spacey and whomever else, like that our larger worlds of entertainment are filled with predatory people who continue to exploit the vulnerable among them.
absolutely.
And that power um produces and reproduces some incredibly shitty outcomes for those vulnerable people. And one of the things that I said that wasn't included in the 60 Minutes interview was that this is not an issue that is specific to hip hop. We see it in hip hop culture, but if we were to zoom out, then we would see it anywhere where folks have power and people who have something to lose or something to gain respond to that power in ways that harm vulnerable people. And
Absolutely.
so I think that that's something that we should also remember, that like that influence and that the idea that it is influential and popular, meaning that somehow it is the place where like bad behavior originates, or that it's the only place. I just think that in some of these other places it's not as loud,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
because it's not on our radar. If I'm not really paying attention to other musical genres, then I wouldn't know that there are powerful people in other musical genres who are also predatorial.
That's right.
But there are, and it's rampant because that's an issue of power. That's not an issue of hip hop. That's an issue of like certain kinds of ideas of masculinity, or ideas of domination. Like these are things that are not, like I said, not produced by hip hop. So we need to keep that in mind as well. In the same way, like when we think about gun violence, of course that's not unique to rappers or unique to hip hop. I mean, like if we could count the number of school children who were killed in shooting incidents, or count the number of parishioners at churches who were killed in shooting incidents, and those numbers, like put side by side with rappers, would make someone say, well, why are you saying that this is an astonishing thing when it happens to rappers, but it's mundane or it's ordinary or it's acceptable whenever it happens to school children? That doesn't make much sense. Now, I'm not excusing one for the other. I'm just saying we need context, because if we only look at it through the lens of hip hop, then it looks like hip hop is where all of our culture's ills lie,
Right. Yeah.
and it's something that is wrong with hip hop. And so I believe that the good things in hip hop like might also portend good things in the broader culture as well. It's just that I don't know that we talk about those things
We
as
don't,
much.
we don't, and that's where I was going with that, because I have to admit, like, for those of us who have been in the hip hop industry for as many years as we've been in it, and for a lot of us, we've either dealt with some of these artists. I've interviewed so many of them over the years that for me, over the last few years, I've taken it quite personally. I feel like the media are just like attacking hip hop all the time, blaming them. So even when I've been asked for certain things, I've gotten quite defensive in that response, and I've gone, well, whilst it is sort of part of our, like obviously talking about the rap beef, and I got
Yeah.
interviewed on the ABC over here about 2 months ago with the whole Kendrick and Drake,
Mhm.
and look, it was my first time ever on like a national news channel talking about hip hop, which was
Mhm.
great. Um, but it was also that kind of, they sort of twist they try to twist that questioning to
Mhm.
you, and but surely as a woman you wouldn't agree with the violence. And I go, well, as a woman I don't agree with violence across any music genre, but we can
Yeah.
really explore that. We can look at heavy metal, we can
Yeah.
look at the rock scene, we could look at all of the greats within pop culture. who have, these men have married underage girls and they were deemed as these gods. But yet hip hop sort of does it, and it's this, thuggery and this, that, and the third. And so there were those moments where I got, man, I wish it just wasn't us. I wish it wasn't hip hop.
Yeah.
Like, we got to do better. But people are flawed. Human beings are flawed, and unfortunately, um, having been in the position of being in hip hop media, with a lot of these artists, like you've said, we've seen these behaviors before. We knew them
Mm-hmm.
back then, but it wasn't really conversational back then. It was, oh, that's Diddy. His parties are always crazy, or
Yeah.
R. Kelly. That's just how he does. But man, he got a voice on him. He can sing. How about we look at the titles of the albums, and he's been linked with these girls and that girl. So
Yep.
there was a moment there as a DJ for myself that I was like, I can't play this music because I feel
Mm-hmm.
almost responsible for what's happened by
Yeah.
enabling the behavior. So then where
Yeah.
do we draw a line with that now? Like, cancel culture is insane right now. We're living in this time where you you burp wrong and it's a wrap, right?
Yeah.
How do you maintain artist credibility with this incredible body of work? Bad Boys Records, come on. People are talking online. I'm not going to not stop listening to Bad Boy. I'm not
Yeah.
going to stop listening to R. Kelly. But morally, how does one deal with those things?
Yeah. I mean, I wish cancel culture was as pervasive as folks seem to believe it is. And what I mean by that is that, like, I don't like, there are people who have been canceled. Uh and unfortunately, as a friend of mine, pointed out, it seems like the people who like have been successfully canceled, all like um it seems like the people who have been successfully canceled, like in recent memory, have been Black women. And I'm thinking like Chrisette Michelle, or like Azalea Banks, uh, and folks like Diddy, or folks like Kevin Spacey, or folks like Louis C.K. Like, folks they're just waiting for the comeback narrative. They're just
Yeah.
waiting for an opportunity to make their lives, like, to restore them back to, goodness. Now, um, I think that there is, like, sort of like, so yes, I have a moral, I think, imperative that says, like, like, I listened to Dave Chappelle, and then, like, I stopped. It's just like, well, I mean, because now this is not even a matter of, sort of like principle, like on principle, like, it's funny, but I feel bad about laughing at it. It's like, it's not even funny. Like that. So that's the reason. And I think that that's what happens with art, with an artist. If the artist makes art that you don't like, then you don't fuck with it. Like, you just leave it alone. So but that doesn't mean, like, so having a conversation about Dave Chappelle's political views and how they don't jive with mine, that's not an attempt to cancel Dave Chappelle. And actually, the fact that we will talk about that as an attempt to cancel Dave Chappelle will, well, in Dave Chappelle's case, it led to him signing a bigger contract. Or, like folks who get canceled, so to speak, and then, like, they end up on, like, Joe Rogan's podcast. So, like, here's the thing. You're not canceled if you're talking about being canceled to 30 million people. That is the literal opposite of being canceled.
Yeah.
That's being amplified. And so I think that the thing that we call cancel culture, like, it's a ruse. Like, it's actually a really sophisticated signifier that says that somebody has said something that is culturally insensitive, and because there are forces that are trying to hold them accountable,
Yeah.
then the people who are like, that culture is too sensitive, those people are going to flock to that and give it a whole lot of attention. So people are out here, I know that people are out here intentionally trying to get, quote unquote, canceled so they can get amplified.
They can amplify.
And,
Wow.
and so, like, I mean, if cancel culture was successful, then we just wouldn't hear about this shit.
Yeah.
Like people would be here one day and then they'd be gone and then there would be no remark. People
Yeah.
would say that person used to exist. I wonder where they went.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't be they wouldn't be like on a national program or on some super popular podcast talking about how we're too sensitive. Because like yeah, in almost all those cases, it feels like they get a larger audience rather than losing an audience. And so they might lose certain people and they might lose certain privileges, but to say that they're removed from the public eye, well, it's just not true. I get asked about Kanye more now than I ever did when he wasn't saying these things that he was saying publicly.
Wow.
Right. And so sometimes I mean there was a point in time when folks were like, oh, Kanye is out here making absurd statements. This must be his album rollout. Right? Like, I mean, even yeah, like and I believe that like even with the like I wrote a review of Questlove's hip hop history book, and I don't assume any negative intent on his part, but I think that he benefits from having said during the Drake and Kendrick Lamar feud that hip hop is truly dead, because then people started writing about it. And then that led into his book coming out. And so I don't know how it's sold. And I imagine that he'll be fine, like that he's done, like a lot of press around it. And he's highly regarded. His opinion, that's the reason that it became news, that he said what he said about hip hop being dead. But it would be silly if someone said like they're trying to cancel Questlove. Ain't nobody gonna cancel Questlove. Questlove, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
He'll continue to work on the Tonight Show and he'll continue to post the things that he does on social media. And I'm pretty sure that his book is going to be a New York Times bestseller, as the previous books were. And again, he doesn't have to try to court controversy in order to do that. But I believe that we're operating in a space where if your name is in the media, whether it's positive or negative, then that's going to generate the kind of attention that will have other people who want the benefit of that attention to invite you to speak wherever they are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's chess, not checkers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And so that's and I think that that's the calculus. And man, like that, it's like, okay, so like if I want like, well, what do I do to get canceled then if I want people to buy my new album? But like but then like I said, it does, like for some people, like you say the wrong thing publicly. Who was the woman who made the Pretty Girl Rock, Carrie Hilson. Like
Mhm.
you say the wrong thing and then like your career, like then like your career never rebounds.
Yeah.
But like as you're coming up with the list of people who were not able to effectively rebound, it's like, yo, that list seems to be like relatively short and full of Black women.
Yeah. I mean, look at what I absolutely love Amanda Seales. I think she's a
Yeah.
necessary voice. She's necessary realness. I really do respect and appreciate her voice so much. And I see what the fire she's come under in the last few months. It's been absolutely abhorrent. Just to read some of the comments and some of the hate that that woman feels every day. But the fight in her and that spirit of just clarity and even toned, she's just it's much like yourself, you speak logically and calmly and clearly, and these are the facts and this is it. And I think people today are so driven off emotion and drama, and because that's just what makes the world go round. And there's so much already that we're dealing with in the world, but to silence necessary voices like that again, and as a Black woman,
Yep.
it's incredibly alarming to me, but it doesn't,
Yep.
it sort of steals my reserve as well. And I dig the heels in even harder. So you're absolutely right in that with the cancel culture thing. I just look at the society that we're living in now. People are so quick to get offended, and this
Mhm.
person said that, and this, that, and the third. And we don't come from that. That's not what our backbone
Yeah.
is about, right? Um,
Yeah.
so then changing gears, I guess, with the artists that have influenced you. over the years to love the hip hop that you love and be involved in hip hop the way you are. Can we shine a light on who those artists are? Do you still listen to them? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on hip hop now and where it's going?
Yeah, like I feel, I feel privileged to, like as a primary component of my job, listen to music and write music. And like I think somebody like Black Thought is like still one
Yes.
of the best rappers rapping. I think that Fonte Coleman is still excellent. I think Love the Genius is an incredible rapper. She's from Buffalo. I really like Tierra Whack as well. Um, I I like the Coast Contra. I think that they are a phenomenal group. Um, I mean, I have no shortage of artists that are like newer artists that I listen to, and then I have like some old school playlists that like that I tried out. And I think that so one of the benefits I guess of my job is that like I get to spend so much time. It should be necessary for me to spend time discovering new artists and then discovering new things about like older art, or just talking about like the changing landscape, like that has sort of emerged since a piece of art, was initially published or presented to people. And so I think that I'm always on the lookout, and I am not nearly as pessimistic about having new art to listen to as some people are. But I think that that has to do with the fact that I go for my job in to talk to people who are discovering new art and new artists and wanting to share that with people regularly. So that's also part of what we're doing in my classes, is that folks are saying, have you, have you listened to Shay Noir? And she makes beats and she rhymes. And and then I might be like, oh yeah, no, I think that she's dope, or I don't know who that is, so send me a link. And so that to me makes me incredibly encouraged about what's happening, but also, in a very real way, I'm teaching artists who are making incredibly dope stuff, who are like sort of emerging. And I just like want to note that because of the way that I think about hip hop culture, I know that most hip hop artists are not famous, and many are not even desiring to be famous. And because of that, the places that you have to go to get their art won't be Spotify or YouTube, or maybe YouTube, but not Spotify, and maybe not Apple Music, or like something that is brought to you by means of, like some huge corporation. That like I still listen to the music that my brother sends me as MP3 files, like his own songs. Or, like that my friends, like I have a good friend whose daughter just turned 4, and like he'll call me on FaceTime, and and she'll like rap how her day went. Like that to me is also an exciting element of hip hop, that her dad, who's also an MC, incredibly accomplished, but he works now, he teaches at a university and he does other kinds of things.
Right.
But like the relationship between him and his daughter, and the way they communicate that to somebody like me,
Yeah.
like when we're on FaceTime, that's also something that's incredibly exciting to me, and it's incredibly mundane. And so I think that we also have to, like I try to make it a point to talk about that as well. The way that I see hip hop in everyday life, the way that I see it with people who aren't aiming to be like viral sensations or not aiming to have their stories amplified by huge corporations. I think that we should also like pay attention to the way that's going on, the way that people are like studying hip hop, or the way that there's like a hip hop aesthetic in a certain essay that you might read, or like when you're walking down the street and you see kids, like at the park and they're ciphering, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't know folks were still doing that. Or, like you go to the local show and you see, like you see somebody who you never heard of, and then, like you follow them on Instagram so you can find out whenever they're dropping a project. That's, I think, also really exciting because that ain't never went nowhere. You know what I mean? Like it's moved because of the technologies to like sort of access points that are different.
Yeah.
But in all of these towns all across the world, even when I was in Cork, Ireland, there was a local hip hop scene that showed up and showed out, and you have to be there to hear it and to see it. And if you're not there, you can't assume that it ain't. And so, like, that's a Charlottesville thing, that's a Sydney thing, that's a Cork thing, that's a Decatur, Illinois thing, that's a hip hop thing that's happening everywhere where people are. And we need to understand that as well. Hip hop is not determined by what it sells and who sells it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, you couldn't have said that any better, any better. Are you familiar with any Australian hip hop artists? Do you listen to Aussie hip hop? Are you?
Oh no, I still
Yeah.
fuck with Dobby heavy. Like I mean, we like I mean, and it's been so dope to see his journey, because I came to Sydney, I want to say in 2016. No, maybe it was 17. And a friend introduced us. And like for real, like I mean, even in that case, like when me and Dobby met, like we went and like we met at a cafe, and then like we walked around, we went to the park, and for real, like was just like rapping. And like I'm like, okay, no, like like I rock with him. Like this, like, and so that's just like sort of on a human level, on a hip-hop level. And
Yeah.
so then like so now like watching from afar the work that he's been able to do, it's like that. I mean, it brings a smile to me because you want to see dope people get a light shined on what they do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so yeah, there are, and someone just sent me, I got a couple of messages, folks have sent me some music. I've also, oh man, I think Briggs
Yes.
is another,
Yes.
um,
Very,
and
very, yeah, a massive sort of movement, very political within the Indigenous community, but he's got
yeah,
incredible, yeah, incredible.
and I think Dobby worked with is Barca, is that her name?
Okay, that's correct. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And so yeah, so like I mean, I'm not like tuned all the way in, but like like I still have my ears open,
you're giving
and
good news. I get you. I
yeah,
get
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Well, listen, we are cooking down here. I'm not going to lie to you. We have incredible artists. Our hip hop community, I like to call it, because the word industry really turns a lot of people off, because our
Yeah.
industry zip 0 0, to be honest. But the community here in terms of artistry, spearheaded by independent warriors that just are doing their thing. I've been calling them the TTGs for years. They're trained to go, right. I was on
Word,
radio for
word.
many years, and they would come straight ready, album done, I just need promo, play it, and the stuff is fresh. Never
Yeah.
used to be like that, but I think because we're in Australia and because we have had to battle for world, relevance, I guess, our place in the hip hop world. A lot of our artists have just gone, no, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna do it and put my own spin on it, and they've done incredibly well. I mean, Alfresh the Lion is another artist I think you dig incredibly.
Okay.
Social, political. He's a Sikh Indian brother out here, so he obviously reps for his culture. He's on
Right.
stages festivals with his beard and his turban on, and he's dealing with all kinds of, who's that? What do Indian people rap and this, that, and the third? And you hear him spit, and it's next level. So
Yeah.
I think you really find him incredibly dope to your earlobes. And of course,
Word,
Dobie,
word, word.
he's really doing the education thing out here as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're doing some things, AD. We're doing some things. So
Nah, I'm gonna keep listening. I'm gonna tune in. Yeah, I have to.
please do, please do. Listen, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you this morning. Your thoughts, your insights into things. It's just I knew that I would be mind blown, but this has really kind of changed my perspective on so many things from your angle, from how you're living, especially within the education world, and the steps that you've taken to create this incredible life that you are living, which is fraught with moments of it's not a fairy tale, and but you're definitely doing it, and changing the way that people are receiving hip hop, receiving its teachings, and going out there and just putting it to good use. I thank you for your incredible work every single day, and wish you the best of luck with upcoming album, new book coming up, and all of the other incredible projects, man. And hopefully we'll get to talk again real soon.
Word. Thank you so much. I really do. I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate the conversation and the attention to the details, and also just doing the work. I really do appreciate that from you. So keep up the good fight, and yeah, looking forward to the next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, brother. And have an amazing weekend, right? I think it's leading into Friday for you over there.
Yes, yes. Yeah, you too. Have a good
Thank
weekend.
you. I certainly will. Thanks so much, man.
All right. Peace.
Somebody in the crowd yells, "Impeach the DJ!" And almost on cue, he places the needle tip down on the record, and the breakbeat begins.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Immediately following at that exact moment, I know that we can have our own political party, that we need our own political party.
ladies and gentlemen,
Right next to the DJ booth is the voting booth, so right after you vote, you can request your favorite song.
ladies and gentlemen,
But you have to be registered to vote, which means you have to be registered to make any other requests.
ladies and gentlemen,
And the dress code is Sunday's best.
ladies and gentlemen,
And after you request your favorite song, you can elect to not be enslaved by the legislation, which the DJ will read over the beat.
ladies and gentlemen,
Please pay attention to the hook. Please pay attention.
ladies and gentlemen,
Then he slaps the crossfader and says, "This is a paid advertisement from your sponsors." Slap. Slap. Hennessy Very Special Cognac and the Jordan Sneaker Company. Slap. Slap. You're encouraged to vote with your wallets. Slap.
ladies and gentlemen,
And the people are in a trance, dancing, drinking, and carrying on. The line at the DJ booth is bustling because the hustlers want to hear hustler music, and somebody wants you're only a customer, so the DJ says, "I do customized mixtapes for almost pennies a song." Then Biggie's Dead Wrong is mixed in, and just when you think it can't get any liver, the crowd almost rises in unison. And I'm thinking Duke can spin whatever record he wants and have them move into it, so I'm pretty sure he could lead our political party with slide dances and chants of, "Do my ladies run this motherfucker? Now do my fellas run this motherfucker?" I said the roof is on fire. We don't need no water. And before last call, everybody who wants their voice heard has their song played, unless the DJ decides it would interrupt the mix, in which case you can get a mixtape at a considerable discount, and your song goes to the top of the list next time around. No guarantees, the DJ says as the lights come up. We don't want to ruin a good time. And the people leave, satisfied. And the DJ goes to the back room to collect his check. The club owner smiles, tosses him cash, and they have a good laugh about politics as usual.